I'm not a medical doctor and I don't claim to play one on TV, but what I can tell you is I am an ardent supporter of kids and students and families. And based upon that, I felt implored to send a letter to Governor Cuomo first thing this morning. I'd like to share it with you. Dear Governor Cuomo, many school districts, including Wappingers, received a document indicating the position from the New York State Department of Health and the Governor's Office that would make the usage of masks optional in schools effective Monday, June 7th. Based on this information, the Wappingers Central School District sent out notification indicating such for Monday, June 7th. Shortly after 2 p.m. on Sunday, we received documentation from the New York State Education Department indicating that districts are to follow the original guidance on wearing masks that was in place prior to the Friday memo. Needless to say, this has created a considerable amount of confusion and consternation for students, parents, and staff within our district. The Wappingers Central School District is the 9th largest school district in New York State, with well over 10,000 students who attend schools in 15 different buildings. Many of the buildings were built prior to 1968, do not have air conditioning in classrooms, common areas, gymnasiums, or cafeterias. The requirement to wear a mask has contributed to health issues for those students and staff who have respiratory issues, asthmatic conditions, and other heat sensitivity ailments. We have had cases where this has occurred, impacting both students and staff over the past couple of weeks. In the interest of health and safety of our staff and students, and the requirement to continue to wear masks, the district felt it was necessary to call a remote learning day, Monday, June 7th, as the heat index forecast was to be close to 100 degrees. My understanding is that it was as high as 97 degrees, and there was a heat advisory for our region. I am hopeful that the New York State Department of Health understands the gravity of this decision, as our district is in Dutchess County, and our COVID positivity rates are extremely low. As, if you watch the governor's presentation today, was shared in his presentation of the differing statistics throughout New York State. So moving forward, I would ask that the decisions regarding mask usage be left up to the local communities in consultation with their county health department. I did not indicate this in the letter, but I can't thank the Dutchess County Department of Health for their willingness to work with all of our school districts in Dutchess County since I assumed this role back in November. Obviously, they were advising us in the absence of state data and guidance, which had not been changed since last August. I've asked that these decisions be able to be made at the local level in consultation with the health department, as it will enable local communities to develop proper standards for mask usage to ensure the health and safety of students are not compromised any further because of the hot and humid conditions that typically occur in the month of June. I also copied our local officials on this letter, and I can tell you that today I did not receive anything from the State Education Department that was anything different than what I received on Sunday, and I did not receive anything from the governor's office. President Lumia will speak to how we've been advised to move forward by our school attorneys. But I would ask the board if they would be willing to work with me to continue to explore this legislation, so to speak, to see if we can identify any ways to reach a happy medium that continues to protect our kids and our staff from the spread of COVID, however, recognizes the needs of the other individuals that are being asked to wear masks, that is creating serious health conditions for them as well. And with that, I also thank the community for your support and your countless emails. It's greatly appreciated. But as I said, I know I'm not a medical doctor, but I am an advocate for students and I am for families. And you can rest assured that that will continue. Thank you very much.
With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to appoint a subcommittee to work with the superintendent to investigate legal mandates with regard to students and faculty wearing masks. I think the motion. Jim Spencer. Ms. Slashauer. I'd like to appoint, if possible, Mr. Slashauer. Ms. Johnson and Ms. Cahill to that particular committee. If it's all in favor? Okay, with that being said, thank you.
President Lumia and Board of Education, I thank you for that, and I look forward to working with the board members in regards to this most important issue. Thank you.
4.01, recognition comments by the Board of Education. Are there any board members who would like to recognize anyone in the community or our students? Keith?
Thank you. I just want to recognize in the month of May, many students who are in the orchestra and the band and in the musical department. A lot of students participated in the NISPA exams, and I hear a lot of the students, many of the students did very well. So I just want to give congratulations to the students, their parents, and especially the teachers and the director of music. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Rappaport?
As I approach the final weeks of my 3-year term on the Wappingers Central School District Board of Education, I want to acknowledge the work that the teachers, our superintendent, Dr. Bonk, as well as our senior and all other administrators have done to educate our students during these unbelievably challenging times. I appreciate the work that families have done to work in partnership with the district, the Department of Health, and the State Education Department in coordinating ever-shifting mandates to educate students and protect them, their teachers, and their families. I'd like to congratulate our graduating seniors as well as last year's seniors for surviving the curtailment of the events, large and small, that have marked their passage through their 13 years of public education. Great things await you in your careers and continuing journey as lifelong learners. Finally, I want to thank my fellow board members, old and new, who have demonstrated a commitment to educating our children as well as to managing a school district the size of a small city. It's been an honor to work with all of you on our many committees and through our regular Board of Education meetings. I will miss you all.
Thank you, Trustee Rappaport. Thank you for your contributions to the board and the district. Thank you.
I have a few announcements in more than 1 minute, unfortunately. Mr. Schlossauer, please don't put me to 1 minute. First, I'd like to congratulate those who received the Regional Chamber Scholarships. From John J. Jillian Grady, who received the Cosimo de Brizzi Culinary Arts Scholarship, and Kyle Vigna, will receive the Norman and Rita Nussbaum Memorial Scholarship. From RCK, Emily Giovanazzi for receiving the Richard W. Mitchell Memorial Scholarship, and Reese McQueen for receiving the Norma and Rita Memorial Scholarship. In addition to that, I had the honor of participating in many activities, such as the Spanish Honor Society at John Jay, the Business Honor Society at John Jay, Junior National Honor Society at both junior highs, the National Honor Society at both high schools, the Italian Honor Society at John Jay, and I was hoping to attend the French Honor Society, but unfortunately, I had to go to a meeting in BOCES, and I asked Mrs. Kellen to participate. I prepared a French speech, so I'm glad she came to my rescue. And I also like to congratulate Coach Mealy for his 400th win as a coach, as a varsity coach of baseball. So once again, let's all congratulate Mr. Mealy. And I would like to make one more comment, if I may, if I can find my notes. There's no one on this particular stage who wants the guidelines given to this district this past Friday to be reinstated. As a parent and grandparent, each of us may have children in this district. Personally, I do not like my granddaughter to follow the state guidelines that she has to wear masks both inside as well as outside on very hot days. We have received numerous emails on both sides of the issue. As board members, no matter what may be our personal view, our personal feelings on this issue, we took an oath when we first were sworn in to follow state laws. As board members, we have, thank you, I appreciate, look, I'm making a statement, you can make your statement when you turn to speak. As board members, we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the district. Lawsuits, should someone get seriously sick following a refusal to follow the guidelines, I called Mr. Jay Verona from the state as well as our attorneys who told us that if we don't follow the guidelines, we would be fined, we could have the board removed, and Governor Cuomo can actually reduce our state aid. And now, no one, I don't particularly like those particular guidelines. I don't particularly like that particular law. But as a board member, I have to follow that law. I don't like it, but I have to follow it, regardless of my personal feelings. I totally understand the concern of parents. Obviously, you're all here to express your concerns. There's no one here who does not appreciate your concerns. And so I'd like to I already made my motion before to appoint a special committee to work with Dr. Bunk, and hopefully that committee will come to some resolution. With that being said, any other comments from board members? All right, with that being said, public comments on agenda items. A total of 30 minutes at the beginning of each board meeting is set aside to allow for public comment on agenda items only. Individual comments on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes and are welcomed. Based on the open meeting law and board policy 1230, debate or dialogue with board members is not allowed during the meeting. Compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issue, or personnel must not be addressed during public comment. Comments or questions submitted through the use of public comment form will be sent to the appropriate staff member who will provide a response on the district public comment response webpage. If you wish to address items relating to a school district that are not on tonight's agenda, another comment period is provided at the beginning of each meeting at the end of each meeting for that purpose. In the interest of civility and respect for different points of view, clapping, booing, and any distribution or disruption is not permitted. At this time, comments related to agenda items only are welcomed. Please state your name and the agenda items you are speaking on. Thank you. Thank you very much, but please. I can't hear you.
Okay. Hello, Maria. Many of you guys know me because I harass everyone all day long about masks, and today I want to actually promote the New York State guidance. I am in compliance.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes?
I think you have to wait until the very end of the meeting to make your statement. I appreciate it. Right now, it's only agenda items only.
You just talked about masks. I'm here to address that.
No.
Roll out. It's me. So much traveling? Not working. On the board.
There, I heard some.
Now is it working? Well, it goes there, no problem. Working off the.
Kristen, is that microphone?
All right. Can anybody hear me?
Hold on, they're trying.
Can I speak while they're trying to fix that? I can be kind of loud. If it's all right with everybody. No, sir.
This is America, go ahead.
No, sir. She's actually next. She's first. I know. Do you want to scream? Do you want to?
Say it loud.
Okay.
I'd like to take a
About
motion to
the
adjourn
agenda
for
item.
minutes until this is resolved.
I know I'm stepping on parliamentary stuff. I apologize. Technical difficulties.
Take a motion to, we're gonna adjourn for a moment.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna adjourn.
They're adjourned, so we can resume.
Okay.
So none of the time will be used up, so it'll be fine.
don't have an amp, right?
Just Terrence? I just heard something. It's intermittent.
I don't have.
Does Terrence have an amp?
Terrence,
Yeah.
Terrence is going to get his portable.
Terrence, is this it?
Yeah, you can plug right into that. That's one of them. Go, you plug directly into that. One by time.
I would.
You can another speaker, new speaker for up there too.
That
I have
would-
another one, so yeah, we'll do there.
What do you need, Darren?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you.
They're not gonna be able to hear.
He's giving another speaker.
Okay.
I didn't see where it was supposed to go. Heard something. But I turned the microphone on. Test. Did anything come out of that? Test.
Tap the mic.
I did. I said test.
Now, Mr. Louise.
Hello. 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2. Thank you, Darren. I can make a motion to return to public session.
Did you hear that okay?
Testing. So moved. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Oh, the other microphones work? Test it.
Don't test them. I probably got overheated. Don't
Testing.
test them.
Can you hear me okay?
Just go in one at a time. Everyone else, you one at a time. Can you try that mic again?
Be able to get there.
I think I'm here. Hit it.
Be able to get there. This is a lot.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes.
They can't.
What was that?
We'll be fine. They can hear you. All right.
You can hear me? Yes. Okay, great. I'm
And
Maria.
since I spoke about masks, I guess you have the right to do the same. Go ahead.
That's right, I sure do. I'm Maria, I live in East Fishkill. My son goes to Gay Head, he's 6. Since you did speak about the guidelines, I also agree with you.
We should be compliant to the guidelines, okay? I'm actually in compliance, that's my field. So I'm agreeing with you. We should be compliant to New York State guidelines. And tomorrow, we can all be intolerant because April 9th, new guidelines came out from the state. And here's what it says. Page 9 of New York State guidance from Cuomo's office.
Excuse me, just address the board, please.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Everyone tomorrow can be in compliance with 95-degree temperatures and masking requirements. Here is the masking requirement. Students who are unable to medically tolerate a mask, including students where such a mask would impair their physical, mental, health, are not subject to the required use of a mask. Period. The end. The end. So tomorrow, my son is going to be coming with a sign on his backpack, and I urged everyone in my Open Duchess site and Facebook, 2,000 members plus, to also be intolerant. Put a sign on your neck or your backpack and comply with the guidance. The end. Thank you.
Just one comment, please. As I read prior to the meeting, in the interest of civility and respect for different points of view, clapping, booing, or any disturbance or disruption is not permitted. So please, we know how you feel. Try to follow what I read. For the interest of civility, thank you.
How you doing, everybody? My name's Ed. I have a student here at the junior high.
Address us.
Oh, sorry. I have a student here at the junior high, and I gotta say, it's very weird coming back into this building after so many years. But the one thing me and my wife were talking about is we understand who the bad guys are and who they're not. We appreciate all that you guys have done. We know that your hands are tied. We know that this crap is coming from the top of New York State and flowing right over you. We feel like, I think we can be agreed that we feel like you are doing the best with what you can. You're going to set up the function you're going to set up some people to look into some stuff. And we want you to do that, but we also want you to go further as far as you possibly can to push against and push back on anything that this is. Like if there's a loophole where it says, my kid, if he's depressed from wearing a mask, now he can take off the mask. Any way we can push back on these terrible restrictions that are coming down to us from people who don't care about us. And and I just wanted to reiterate that, I read your letter before, I read the superintendent's letter before, I'm in complete agreement with that, and I see that you are doing what you can, and we just want to make sure that you understand we're all behind you as you push back on anything, in any way that you can. I know you can't just throw everything out because of what you said as far as you have a responsibility to this board to not be thrown out, and you have a responsibility to follow the rules that are just and that are set up by logical minds and reasonable people. But in any way we can push back, that's what we hope you can do.
Hi, everybody. It's been a long time. Deborah Torres. Good to see you again. I'm really excited about what just happened earlier. And I wanted to, number one, request that this new committee that just formed meet in an emergency session as soon as possible. Can we make that happen? Mr. President, can we make that happen?
I'm sure.
Okay, as soon as possible. Secondly, I see there's a little difference between what was just said. We had a committee formed to look at what's going on with legislation, but then you just said we have to abide by what the state, shoves down our throats. I don't know if you're aware, but it's happened before, and I'll make you aware if you're not. Long Island is not following the state guidelines. They are doing the right thing by making the masks optional for their children. And the board members have said, because of the ambiguous nature of the state's directives, so to speak, and because the CDC hasn't gotten back to them, and because the state hasn't gotten back to them, they are going to move forward, just as Dr. Bonk had mentioned in his email, with having it be optional to those students, faculty members who are in the schools. Now, if they can do it, why can't we? And if they can do it, why aren't we calling them and getting a group of all these boards together to shore up our masses and push back, just like the gentleman just said, on the state? It's time to push back. I don't come out of hiding for nothing. This is serious stuff. I know you could do it, John. I know you can. Stop hiding behind, it's the state. We got to do it. The state says we've got to do it. CDC has recommendations. I'm sure each of you know the difference between a recommendation and a law. There's no law. There's a difference between a mandate and a law. There's no law. We need to stand up for our children. If we cannot stand up for the mask issue, 2 seconds. We're not going to be able to stand up against the vaccinations being forced, and we're certainly not going to be able to stand up against CRT or anything else coming down the pike. Stand up, push back. Good to see you all.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Miggets. I'm a district resident, and I'm here to speak about a different topic on the agenda. I noticed that Mr. Flusser's annual report on the school lunch program is on the agenda tonight. And after sitting through these presentations for over a decade now, I have a couple of questions that I'm hoping he or Assistant Superintendent Crandall address in their presentation, or if not, that we can get answers on the website. First, I'd like to commend both Mr. Flusser and the district for listening to parents the past few months and applying for the waiver for school lunches for next year. I was happy to see, looking at the projected budget, that if the district can meet the budget goals, that there'll be over $900,000 that can be paid back into the fund balance to replace funds that have been borrowed to cover shortages in the past. But I do have a couple of questions, because I know that the state or the federal government bases its reimbursement on the lunches actually served. So I'm wondering what percentage of families and students in the district we need to have buy into participating regularly in the lunch program to be able to hit that subsidy goal. And I also noticed that the budget still relies on the district being able to sell $1 million in a la carte items. And so I'd like to know what the level of confidence the district has that they'll be able to meet the goals with those conditions. The other thing is, I know that in the past, if students have purchased a lunch and they refused a certain number of components, the families were billed for a la carte meals instead of for the lunch. Is this going to be part of the program next year? And particularly new families of young elementary students, will there be clear communication to them so that they understand if little Johnny doesn't want his green beans, mom and dad may have to pay for the lunch? And if there is a renewed commitment to more options, including healthy eating and vegetarian options, so that, for instance, if a vegan student refuses the protein in a vegetarian meal because it is animal-based and not plant-based, if that family is going to be charged for a la carte service. And I'll be happy to submit these on the website if they're not covered tonight. Those are just the questions that I have. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Bonk and board members. My name is Kelly. Can I take this off? Is it okay? Here, sorry. My name is Kelly, and I'm the parent of a fourth grader at Brinkerhoff Elementary School. I'm here tonight because I, like so many other parents, have serious concerns regarding New York State's mask mandate in schools. When you announced on Friday afternoon that masking would be optional following CDC guidelines, my son, who's here tonight, had the biggest and brightest smile I saw in a very long time. And he said, "We're finally all free again. We can breathe. We can be normal kids." You don't know, as a parent, what it's like to hear that. My son, just recently, as the temperatures increased, has begun suffering from rashes. These rashes are actually yeast rashes for his sensitive skin. I took him to the doctor. It's on his face, behind his ears, under his nose, his chin. Not only is this uncomfortable, it's painful, and it's embarrassing. My son gets off the bus some days and his skin is almost purple because he's so hot. It's terrible. It's disgrace. I'm very, very thankful for Dr. Bonk's email today, strongly encouraging Cuomo to let schools handle at the district level. And I appreciate, Dr. Bonk, you advocating for our children. I am truly thankful. Thank you. But at this point, anybody who wants the vaccine, 12 plus, of course, is able to get it. They're able to get it anywhere now. They're actually giving you lotto tickets to get it, okay? Imagine that. And free food, free airfare, and the list goes on, okay? There are numerous studies that show this virus does not affect children the same as adults. These are studies, not my opinion, not pseudoscience. We also know that the good Dr. Fauci himself said that these, and I quote, drugstore masks don't really offer any kind of real protection. But, but we're putting our kids in these. We're putting our kids in these in the effort of what? It's virtue signaling, and it's offensive. I'm here tonight asking for your support. I'm asking for each board member to please continue to advocate for our children, to keep pushing back on New York State and this draconian mask mandate. Parents, and only parents, should make the choice as to mask or no mask, not New York State. I will not co-parent with Governor Cuomo or any of his henchmen. I understand your hands are tied. I do. I understand you're following the guidance from the state. Excuse me, ma'am. Oh, am I tied? Oh, sorry about that. Can I just finish the quick one? It'll be so quick. Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. Oh, okay. So anyway, I know you're following the mandates, but these mandates don't make sense, and it's time to push back before we lose all rights for choice as parents. It's time to start acting in the best interest of our children, and that's all that matters. I urge you to please push back and tell Governor Cuomo or anyone else that you cannot in good conscience enforce his warped science. And I'd like to leave with this. When you restrict the movement and freedoms of healthy people to protect the unhealthy, that's called tyranny. Thank you and good night.
My name is Frances Addis. I am a kindergarten parent at Oak Grove Elementary School. I am also a pediatric nurse with my most recent experience at Maria Ferreri Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. I'm just going to reiterate some of the facts that these speakers have previously stated, such that statistically, children are not affected by COVID-19 the way that adults are. Very rarely they get something called MIS-C, which they have gotten a handle on. We put our children in masks to protect the vulnerable teachers and students who could not be vaccinated. Those teachers have now had the opportunity to be vaccinated. At this point, the health risks of our kids being in 90-degree weather in masks is going to cause asthma attacks, heat stroke, and other things that the school nurses are not equipped to handle. Sir, respectfully, you said that you had a job to listen to the laws of New York State. And I'm here to beg the argument that you have a responsibility to the community who elected you to protect the well-being of our children.
Are there any comments that you received, Christian, on agenda items?
It is not live streamed to open public.
I can't hear you.
Only the microphone.
Okay, thank you. That being said, 6.6.01, school lunch fund presentation. Mr. Flusser, is he here?
Okay, Matthew, go right up. Go right up? Go right up.
Hello? Oh, up to the podium. Hello? Ooh, big time here. It's great to be here in front of a live audience for the first time in a long time. What a long, strange trip it's been. I'm here to present my budget for the school year 21-22, and I'll try to keep it short. The food service is here to provide safe, nutritional, cost-effective food to our students, and that's exactly what we have done and will continue to do. This year has been harder than any other. And I'll say that throughout the pandemic, my great staff has risen to the occasion. I could not have done it without them, and with a special shout out to Melissa Jones, my assistant, who was with me in the trenches the whole time. She is awesome. My staff was here from day one to feed the students. We had to pivot and change what and how we we're doing things to get the food to the students. Going from totally remote feeding to feeding some in school and some remote. We had to package most of the meals. We had to deliver a lot to the classrooms, and my staff was on the front line and still is the whole time. We had to keep changing how we would get the food to the students, and it was different in all the schools, which added to the challenge. With the 15 schools, 15 courses of problems and, opportunities. We had to work with the district, administration, facilities department, health department, state ed, principals to get the systems in place, and I think that everyone did a great job. We did the best we could do, and I have to congratulate my staff for an awesome job. With students not in school at all in the beginning, and only 2 days a week and then 4 days a week, it was very hard to make ends meet. Plus the lack of a la carte sales was just a tough year. And should we say a year and a half now? It's more than a year. We can't look back, we can only look forward to rebuilding next year. And we are opting for the SSO waiver. And that will give all students the opportunity for free meals for school year 21-22. Now that is reimbursable meals, so they have to take a complete meal. And we will help all the students know what that meal is. But I think it's a great opportunity, and this will help us shave off a lot of the debt that we've acquired over the year and a half. And we look forward to rebuilding. And I think that next year will be a great year. And we're going to continue on doing the things that we set out to do 2 years ago, which is more vegetarian items, helping all the students who need food, and just continue on. Does anyone have any questions for me? There. Hello. It's been a while since I was in person.
Does any board member have any questions? Eddie?
First off. Hear me? No.
Testing.
No.
You're right.
Hello. First, I want to just reiterate, Mr. Flosser, great, what you and your staff have gone through the past, 15, 16 months. Nobody ever thought this would ever happen. And still being able to take care of all the kids in the community over the summer with the drive-throughs, the pickups and everything else. You and your staff, a world of thanks, commendable, just an incredible job. Community really needs to realize exactly what it takes in order to feed all of these kids 2 meals a day during a pandemic. So I want to thank you, and please thank everyone. I'm going to say behalf, and I'll take it on behalf of the board. I think we're all just very grateful that you and your staff were able to navigate through this. With that being said, I know, and I've always every year, numbers and different things. So one little thing that trying to work on through the municipality relationship and committee that I chair with the superintendent and all of the town supervisors, we've been in discussion with Dick Thurston at the town of Wappingers, putting a program together where they actually have some usable farmland. And we're going to try to put a program together with Dr. Caldwell and high school where the kids can go out and have some actual farming experience. And then obviously utilize what they grow back to the school as well as to local pantries. We're in the early stages because obviously it's been Zoom meetings and we really haven't been able to sit down and really hammer this out. But he was very, very forthcoming and very interested in partnering with the district. So at some point, you will have a conversation with him. I just think it's a good opportunity, kind of the farm to table, which, as one of the parents had mentioned, with more vegan options, which would be great because it would be local produce. So that's just something just to let you know that hopefully we can get going for you for some point for next year. So again, I just want to thank you and your staff, and we'll definitely make back what we lost. Are we going to continue with the a la carte with sandwiches? Is the boarhead option still part of the plan, or possibly expanding the boar's head? Let's say cold cut. I don't want to say opportunities, but the cold cut options, other than a ham, a turkey, they've come out with some new products. Do they meet guidelines for state ed? And could we offer that to give them a little bit more choices, which in turn may help increase some revenues? So again, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Jim?
Thank you for your presentation. I think you answered the first question that one of our community members had about meeting the $1 million for the a la carte. But the other question, and I had a problem understanding this, where a student takes a lunch, doesn't take all of the food on the lunch and gets charged a la carte, which is sometimes more. You said we're going to help them understand, what that means so that people, families can make decisions more, in line with taking a full meal and then maybe sharing it with another student or something. How do you plan on doing that?
Well, I mean, we post things on the serving lines, and all my staff recommends that students take a complete meal. This year, I'd say we will send out a blast to all the students, just reminding everybody with the waiver that meals, the opportunity would be free, but they would be how this meal would be free.
Just to add one more piece, sorry. As well, Mr. Spencer, if on federal audit, and we do get audited, if there is not all of the components and a student is adamant that they do not want it, we do not have any choice but to do that, because we would be in violation of USDA guidelines and National School Lunch Program. So students are encouraged, and then we go back to the same argument we've had in the past. Look at all the waste we have because we have to offer all these components. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that goes around, but I can tell you right now, with the increased rates that we will be getting for reimbursement on these meals, Mr. Flusser will make sure that he's maximizing that, because that is the way that we will be able to bounce back as a program.
Thank you very much. I wasn't disputing that. The one thing that I would encourage, though, is that at every school, if we could have some kind of campaign of sharing, instead of, wasting, that might be able to help the situation.
And that's not something that we have to be careful with that as well. Like, we can't have a sharing table. A lot of times we have allergies and so on and so forth. So we'll work with the building principals for sure to see what we can do. But there's not a lot of times where we can take something, give something type situations. But we'll work with them for sure.
I have one question. Your program is self-funded, as perhaps the district the community does not know. Everything has to come, the salaries has to come from what you get. My question is, do you have enough funds available to cover all the costs associated with your program?
Well, we were rolling along before the pandemic.
I'm aware of that.
So we are hoping to make up some ground next year to pay off the past, and then the program can support itself.
The fund balance is really in the red a lot.
Mr. Lumia, if you look behind you just briefly, you'll see.
Yes, if I see the red, you're in the red.
Sure, but I just want to point out that the loss was $570,000 in 1920, but the fund balance was, I'm going to say only, but was negative 274, which tells you that the profit was being operated prior to the 1920 school year. Mr. Flusser and his team have done amazing work with increasing participation. They've had Gay Head Chef of the Week. They've had promotions for breakfast, doing a lot of different things, expanding their meal options. Again, utilizing the school gardens when possible in order to be able to keep everything like in-house. So yes, participation is key. And without participation, that's where the revenue comes from. There is no money that comes from the general fund, and Mr. Flusser has gone above and beyond to stretch his staff as far as possible in order to keep that labor and benefit number down, because again, we are in the people business, right? So we're a people business serving food. So he's done really well doing that. If you can look, it actually is lower in the projection for 2021 than what was spent in 1920, again, in a pandemic. But at the same time, that's what we're trying to do. So that participation is key. He's going to ramp up all those efforts again to make sure everybody knows that they have free opportunities in the 2021-22 school year. And also be mindful that this waiver is a one-time deal at this point. The USDA has made it very clear that this waiver is 1 year, and we will do what we can going forward. However, our numbers do not meet the levels at this current time to be able to offer free and reduced lunch to all students every year. So again, we'll continue to monitor that, and it's application-based at this point, and we just continue to move forward. But really want to commend Matthew and his team. They've done great work from the second day that we were in the pandemic back in March. They were outside handing out food. It was really, truly a great, great group of people.
There's no question that you've done a wonderful job. And I've seen that personally with people standing outside and passing out meals. So I really want to thank you and your staff for all you've done for this district and the kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Punk?
Thank you, President Lumia. Mr. Flusser, I'd like to commend you and your entire staff. You've worked tirelessly since this pandemic started. You were here, your staff was here daily, working during the pandemic, ensuring that our students received the food that they needed. I can't thank you and the entire food service staff for all of your diligence and work on behalf of our students. I know it was difficult. I know things changed up and you had to adjust and adapt, and your staff did that tremendously. I think that's a testament to their work ethic as well as your leadership. So I want to thank you on behalf of the entire district. Great work, very proud of you. Thank you.
You're 100% right. My apologies. I hate to tell you that during presentations, I'm reminded by the board, during presentations, you can't clap. It's only when comments are made from the public that boo and well, apparently some of us don't listen. All right. 6.02, approval of the 21-22 school budget. Budget. Keith?
Resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappingers Central School District does hereby approve participation in the National School Lunch Program, to accept the policy statement and authorize the President of the Board of Education to sign the certificate of acceptance. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappingers Central School District does hereby adopt the full service budget for the 2021-2022 school year as presented to the Board of Education as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
Motion?
So move. Second.
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 6.03, School Counseling Comprehensive Plan. Dr. Amy Watkins.
Hello, President Lumia, Superintendent Bonk. I have Dr. Watson's coming up right behind me.
Okay.
I'm just going to set the stage for this. As Mr. Flusser had indicated, this has indeed been a challenging year, and not just in the area of making sure our students are fed and are healthy, but as well as addressing their social, emotional learning and needs during this last year and a half. So the district was well positioned as we had developed and implemented at the beginning of September 2019 our school counseling plan, which aims to address student social emotional well-being K-12. So what Dr. Watkins is going to do is take you through what we did this year to support students during this very challenging time, and kind of give you a micro picture. And then we have one of our very talented school counselors from Van Wyck. She's going to give you a little narrative about a particular case that occurred with her and a student, and how she supported them during this and to navigate this journey. And just think of that and multiply that by 100 of all the work that was done throughout this district by our school counselors, our school psychologists, our social workers, teachers, and building administrators. So with that, I'm going to have Dr. Watkins kind of take you through the slides and kind of paint a broad picture. And then I have Miss Ann Bogan from Van Wyck Junior High School, and she'll take you through a little personal journey that she had with the student, and just this is how powerful this work has been. So, Dr. Watkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zip, and thank you for the opportunity, Board of Education members, to let us share. I'm thrilled that we're back in person and that I get to be one of your presenters. It's like kismet, perfect. So I would want to remind everyone about the goals from our school counseling plan, as Mr. Zip had stated, goal 1 and 2, and I'll give you a chance just to review those. And when you look at the needs of identifying students, helping students identify their strengths and attributes to achieve their goals, looking at our counseling model, allowing students and families to collaborate with the school and the community. So while we were in a virtual setting this year, our counselors are resilient, I have to say, and have supported our students 110%. And actually, some hidden silver linings to this is through that remote Wednesday and in the time that was embedded at the end of the day, our counselors did utilize those times to have virtual meetings throughout the year with students. Our parents actually attended impromptu meetings with our counselors, also planned meetings to discuss their child's mental health and well-being, their grades. And that was much easier from the feedback that I've received on parents, that they were able to do that because they didn't have to take off necessarily a half day from work in order to do that, where they could log in. So there has been some silver lining to that. As I mentioned, those topics included scheduling, career planning, attendance, grades, and overall wellness. And I'm going to be speaking to the college fair and electives fair and mental health month in just a moment. But I wanted to give Ms. Bogan, as Mr. Zip had said, an opportunity to share with you a specific example of how her efforts exemplify what a counselor has done for their students this year to help them transition back to this in-person learning. So Ms. Bogan?
Hi, I'm Ann Bogan. So nice to see everybody here. The counselors and all the counselors, we knew one of our big goals was to help our students come back to school after being away for such a long time. Some students had a difficult time because of fear. Some students were just overwhelmed with coming back to school. So we, the counselors, especially at Van Wyck, we would meet with our students after the school day. Our students who were fearful would come in and walk around the building and get used to their schedule, walk around, feel more comfortable. One student in particular that I had, the mom reached out to me, was struggling getting her into school. So I met with her after school, and then in the morning, I would just come to the car with the mom to drop her off, and I would just be a friendly face. A couple of days, it was just driving in and then leaving and attending remotely. And then we started having her walk in the building with me, go to her first period class, look in the door, go back in the car, go home. And every day, talking about mindfulness, really just worrying about the moment. It's not what's going to happen next period, but where you are right now and how you feel right now. It took a couple of weeks. I also teamed up with one of the teachers on my team, and together we met with the student and her mom in the morning. She got off, came into school, and now I have to tell you, she's doing beautifully. She stopped by to see me the other day. She's riding the bus, doing well in school. So she's one example of what we've been doing to support our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bogan. So I wanted to highlight, again, specific examples of our students, and having the access to Google Classroom really made this virtual world successful for our students to keep those connections going when we couldn't be in person. And I had mentioned, May was just Mental Health Month, but since this past spring of April last year, April 2020, we developed as a team, the social workers, school psychologists, and our school counselors, the WCSD is Here For You website. And that's just the background of the website. But on the right-hand side where you see the mental health and wellness agencies, this is an example of one of the counselors' Google Classroom and how those resources would appear for those students so that they're always there for them to refer back to, in addition to always having their counselor available to them. We also were able to, in a virtual environment, create the college fair, and 3 of our counselors worked tirelessly on that. Ms. Boscia, Ms. Mrs. Aguado now, and Ms. Califano developed an amazing college fair virtually, where we had over 80 colleges available to our students and parents in the evening to allow them to visit virtually different representatives and ask questions. Some representatives had a PowerPoint slide, some representatives just had one-to-one conversations, but that information continues to be on the website and available to students who wanted to get some of the resources those colleges provided. We also did a similar format with our virtual electives fair, which is a great way for our students to learn more about expanding what they like or what they want to learn a little bit more about. So we developed a site that's also still available that allows each of our departments to share the types of electives that they have available. And there were interactive presentations. So that was a great thing for them to see. I wanted to also use this presentation as an opportunity to highlight that we met with the Advisory Council this year. So our Advisory Council, as it indicates there, consists of obviously our school counselors, but we also had current and graduated students, parents within the district, and administrators. And together, that teamwork formed to provide us some feedback on the current goals and what the next level of work would be. So one of the highlights of that, we met, I think, 2 times. The highlights of that were really talking about our students and how they were feeling, those feelings of anxiousness and depressed, being overwhelmed, the challenges of the pandemic. And this resounding theme that students really miss, as we all did, and continue to, that human contact and those face-to-face conversations. And you can see from the picture, one is a fresh air day at Gayhead Elementary, another is from Van Wyck. A student has in the library has an alternative location for doing his reading, just giving them other options that are away from the screen, so when they do come back, that they're not still in front of the screen 100% of the time, so that they have, whether it's time to engage in a book or time outside to engage in fresh air. This highlights some of the opportunities that I've captured from our social media pages, just celebrating our students being back in school. And even though they have their masks on, they're still doing group work, they're doing presentations in the upright, and then a sports team down Ketchum students at John Jay doing a presentation, but allowing our students to try to re-engage with the environment that they've become very familiar with. I wanted to highlight that, we had 6 parent members that were on our committee, in addition to the 5 students that I mentioned, and administrators representing each of the levels, and 2 of our trustees that are here this evening. In addition to President John Lumia, we also had Trustee Peggy Kellen and Trustee Marie Johnson, who were part of the advisory committee, and I truly appreciate your input. And then we had counselors from each of the levels, including our newest elementary counselor, Daniel Kane. So it was wonderful to have the different viewpoints coming in. At the end of the day, even though, as we can feel tonight, it does feel like summer, we are already planning for the fall, and how do we help our students with this transition? And there's so many unknowns, just as we've found out the last few days, things are changing rapidly. But our counselors are working on those transition presentations, and while we can't predict exactly if they're in person, if they're virtual, what they're going to look like, we are making a point of helping students envision what to expect when they return to their school. So our counselors will have their summer days, and we'll be focusing on presentations to help students navigate the building, whether through virtual tours or smaller group in-person tours to look at the buildings, look at lockers, understanding social distancing. And throughout the year, there's going to be an additional focus. While it's always something that we embed, we recognize that students really are going to need that group support. So using groups of students to find safe places to share common feelings. We have had some success this year with students who've done that virtually, but there is that sense of should I participate, should I join this group or not. So we want to build that resiliency with students, that they feel comfortable to do that. And as always, one-on-one counseling for students who need additional support, to know that their counselor is available to help them in a healthy mental space. So some of the recommendations from the advisory council, they asked, like we're doing this evening, communicating the K-12 plan at a board meeting, putting that information on our social media pages. There was definitely a request of the district to consider additional means for our students to work with or for community members, such as mentorships and internships. And that's something that is in the works, as Mr. Slowshower mentioned earlier, with Dr. Thurston from Town of Wappinger. I've been working with him as well, not just on the farm, and trying to get some of our FFA members to be part of that and move forward with that. But we also have students that are volunteering in his office, doing various jobs there. So creating that pipeline for him as well. I will zip it up. This is the last slide. And we're going to continue to find opportunities for students to connect with their counselor. And that is all I have. Are there any questions? Made it just in time. I'll give everyone a chance to get back to your seats and face forward.
Mr. Sloshower, I believe you have a question.
First, just want to say thank you and thanks to all of our staff. This is just something, I don't know how you managed to do this virtual, for counseling, for mental health, for college, for everything else. So thank you, to everybody that was involved in this. And hopefully we never have to do it this way again.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback, because I know that you've met with Dick Thurston over at the Town of Wappingers, just also to let you know that Supervisor D'Alessandro in East Fishkill, I don't know if he had the opportunity yet to reach out to you, if you guys haven't connected, but he also wants to do an internship either at Town Hall, and he had also mentioned to me that there is a possibility of some paid positions for either juniors or seniors before they go away to school. If they're looking for some extra money over the summer, there could be some opportunities.
Sounds like a good competition with the town supervisor.
Well, we were trying to think RCK for WAP and John Jay for East Fishkill, but they could go either way.
No, Mr. D'Alessandro and I have.
Okay, so that's great.
We will continue.
That's just something else as well.
Excellent.
So again, just thank everybody for really, figuring out how to do this in order to help the kids. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. And the credit really does go to the counselors. They've done an amazing job.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Again, I don't have the list, so just
Excuse
thank
me,
all
can
of them. Thank all of them.
Ed, can I ask
Peggy?
for 5 minutes? Or 10
I like a motion of 5 more minutes. All those in favor? Fine. Go ahead.
You go
Peggy,
ahead.
you had a question?
Mr. Spencer.
Hi, I was wondering, and this just came up this weekend. I was at my college reunion virtually, and which is the way they did the whole reunion. And they had a panel of faculty members, and they talked about the difficulties when their students were off campus, but they also talked about some of the surprise benefits that they found with the virtual communications with remote. They said that in the fall semester, they really got to know their students because their students were Zooming in from their homes, and they said office hours, of course, at the college level, is, they said it's no matter how informal you try to make it, it's still kind of a formal setting. And they said they really appreciated how their students opened up to them more. And I was wondering if you had found any opportunity when we were remote, or with the students who remained remote, of having one-on-one counseling sessions with them when they were home.
Yes, so our counselors at all levels, that's how they met with the students, and our students that still remain remote, that's how they meet with them. So the difficult component was they may set a time, the counselor with the student, it's agreed upon, but then the student doesn't show up. So there's a lot of rescheduling that happens. The silver lining that came out of it was there was an increase because of the ease of the calendaring feature that our counselors, several of our counselors included within their signature on their email, that the students could elect to book an appointment with their counselor that way versus sending them an email waiting for them to get back. So that was a nice silver lining of the addition. I think the hardest piece was where there was Zoom fatigue and the students really just wanted to have a conversation. I was very fortunate that during the observations that I was doing of our counselors this past month and a half, I was able to hear students that were just returning back to the classroom share how their transition went and that they felt very focused. They felt like they could get more done in person. They felt more connected. So definitely the feedback from the students that I heard directly was very positive for them. They felt very focused.
Thank you.
Marie?
Yes, I'd like to piggyback. I noticed in one of your slides that the counselor was including a bunch of links if children were having issues. This kind of goes across both our communication committee that we're on, that we touched on, and also legislative action. I know Mr. Sloshower was working with to get mental health websites out, and I was just wondering if we were going to be putting that to make sure that's like almost like a headline for all of our schools, so that this is the time we're going back hopefully to normal living soon, and that this is going to help bring forward any children that are having issues and the anxiety and I have to say, in the Honor Society that I went to go see last week, I noticed, a little bit of a different, kids were scared if they got within 2 feet of me, and I had my mask and I was socially distanced between everybody in between, but you could see that it's definitely worn fatigue, and I was just wondering if we were going to put this out there.
So I know that I can't speak to, I can do a poll for my counselors, but in the past meeting that we had, the understanding was that the majority, if not all of our counselors have links just as these in their Google Classroom. And the nice piece about that is that that's just one click in their classroom for them, so they always have access. It's not like they have to scroll through a million emails to go back and find it. And the WCSD is here for you is linked on both the school reopening page and under students and counseling on our district page. And I try to send out frequent reminders with WCSD is here for you on all of our social media pages too. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Dr. Watkins, I'd like to thank you for chairing such a committee, and I thank all those participants and that particular committee. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you for being part of it.
I believe that our illustrious superintendent wants to say something.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you, President Lumia. Dr. Watkins,
Don't leave him.
I want to thank you and Mr. Zip, the school counseling TCs, the entire school counseling department for a magnificent effort under very, very difficult circumstances. Obviously, we know moving forward, we are going to have to turn it up a notch when our students return in September to assess where they are, not only academically, but socially and emotionally. And we will be looking forward to our counseling staff and working with our students to make sure they're where they need to be so that socially and emotionally they are set to excel academically. So with that, again, thank you for what you've done, and thank you for what you're going to do. Thank you.
6.04 Special Education Annual Report, Mr. Richard Zip.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. Thank you, President Lumia and Superintendent Bonk. So we're going to go through the yearly special education report. As I go through the slides, there are a couple I'm going to linger on just to explain them, and some that have stayed the same over the last couple of years. I'll give them a brief explanation. But there are a couple of key pieces here I want to emphasize today for the presentation. So I'll start at the very beginning. We've had some changes over the last couple of years, so just getting some of the new faces to the board. As we all know, Mrs. Karen Smith, the director, had moved on to a new position, and we had an opening for a director. So Miss Julia Montoya, who's been at Wappingers for 15 years, about 7 to 9 as a school psychologist at Fishkill Plains. And then after that, as an assistant director for many years, she is now our new director of special education. In addition, because of the impact of COVID last year, we had a couple of new additions last year as well as this year that I don't want to have them get lost in what's been a COVID year and a half. So Mr. Tim Farron continues to support the students at Royce C. Ketchum High School. Mrs. Karen Brown is at John Jay High School. Dr. Leah Raftis is the assistant director for Vassar Kinry and the students at DC Bosse's, as well as the students at our Catholic schools, St. Columba and St. Mary's of Fishkill. Last year, 2019-20, we had Dr. Denise Robinson come on board as a new assistant director, as well as Mrs. Shana Cruz, who was a teacher at Oak Grove for many years, and started last year in March. So talk about someone who's resilient and, came in at a time that she's truly done a wonderful job considering what she walked into March of 2020. At the beginning of this year, we brought over Miss Lauren Broadbelt, who's doing a wonderful job at Brinkerhoff. She also supports Fishkill Plains Elementary School. And then lastly, Dr. Amber Saraceno has joined us this past, I think, March. So the team is complete. We've had some reshuffling, but a complete team and really an excellent team to have moving forward. This hasn't changed. I like to leave this slide in for my presentations. I call these the 2 pillars of special education. Special education students, as well as all students, are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. We call that FAPE, and that is to be delivered in the least restrictive environment, LRE, to the greatest extent possible. Those 2 cornerstones of special education have not changed, and they're really our guiding principles. We think about special education students and what programs they need within the Wappingers Central School District. This data just came out recently. It's looking at 1920 graduation rates, and Wappingers has done simply an outstanding job. We had 120 students with disabilities indicate of graduating age, and 73.3% of them graduated. The state target is 60.66. We're clearly about 13 percentage points higher. Met the state target, exceeded the state target. So as far as, doing what we need to do for our students with disabilities, we are exceeding the state target. Clearly, we want everybody to graduate, but being at 73% is really great work. Of that 73%, here's a breakdown of students last year. As was for 18-19, the number of students who are classified graduating with an advanced Regents diploma stayed the same at 6. Where we saw the greatest increase was students graduated with a Regents diploma. For 19-20, we had 85 students graduate with a Regents diploma. In 18-19, we had 43. Some of that is due last year to the impact of the pandemic and the fact that the Regents exams were canceled, and for students who needed those to graduate, got exempt status. The great news, why that's great, is that we prepared our students to take those classes, to take those Regents exams. We didn't shy away from them. We supported those students. And the great news is that, when an unfortunate opportunity, came around, we had students who were in a position to benefit, who have taken Regents exams prior and passed them and did well, but clearly for many of those juniors, it was the ELA and US Regents exams. And that's why that number doubled from the previous year. We do have some students within our level classes at RCK John Jay. 1 student graduated with a non-high school diploma option. Typically, those students age into adult services. We had 1 particular student transfer to a GED program. Out of a total cohort, we had 8 students drop out, and then we have 16 who are going to stay continued enrolled for another year. So that's the breakup of last year's graduating cohort. This also just recently came out. This is our graduation rate for 19-20. you take a look at the historical perspective going back to 13, 14, we've kind of lingered right below 15%, probably 13.5. We've kind of gone up half a percentage point, down half a percentage point. So we're kind of right where we were historically for almost about a decade. However, if you look on the left, take a look at our total population, that continues to drop. I spoke to Assistant Superintendent Mr. Lokema just to get an idea, and I think I had the number memorized. I said, since I've been here at Wappingers in 2015, what's been the total decrease in our census? And I think since that time, our census has dropped about 750 students. Right, so someone might say, well, gee, shouldn't the classification rate automatically go down as well? You would think that. However, what I've done with this particular slide here is take a look at the trends over the last 6 years since I've been here. And if you notice where it says exiting students in parentheses, I have a -6 to +15 all the way down. That's the differential between entering students new to the district, people who move up from the city or move down from Albany or move in from another state, compared to our students who in fact then move out. And if you take a look at that going down, in 18-19, we had 120 new students into our district classified. And we had 93 move on in. That's a +27. If you think about a number like that with the decreasing census of 750 students, a 1% increase in the classification rate is roughly about 115 students plus or minus 3. That alone is roughly a fifth. So if you think about that, this influx, and if you take a look at the numbers, and I think I memorized this as well, if you add that second column up, everything in parentheses, it ends up being, I think, 166 students, that have been into the district. That's a fairly large number. However, as you take a look as things go through the course of the year, we have new referrals. Of those new referrals, how many students are newly classified? After that, how many students are declassified during the year? They no longer necessitate specialized instruction. How many students graduate from that? How many students come in from preschool? And what is that breakdown? And you do see that as students come here over time, we have solid programs. We do right by them. And I think in that differential column at the bottom, that number is roughly, I think, about 45. So that's how many additional students we have within our programs. I do have the question mark because I don't know exactly how many students are going to graduate this year because we're not quite finished. So that 106 represents an average of the previous 5 years. So if we stay on average, we'll graduate about 106 students, and having that number walk through, we would have a differential of a +66. So just looking at some trends here and how they impact the district moving forward. This has stayed relatively the same over the years, and it's pretty consistent across the county when I talk to other directors and or the state. The 4 big disability categories are, number 1 is learning disability. Based upon national statistics, anywhere between 40 to 50% of all classified students have a learning disability. After that, you have what's called other health impairment. It tends to be a category where, say, students who have attention deficit disorder would be classified within that nomenclature. Tourette syndrome. So that becomes the second largest category. What tends to go hand in hand with learning disability is speech and language. So you see we also have many students classified with the speech and language issues. And then the last one is autism, which has been on the rise, I think, in the county, at least during my experience, since probably the early 2000s. Back then, it was a much lower incidence disability. And I think over the last 20 years, it's really risen as diagnostic tools have gotten better, as physicians have gotten more sensitive to characteristics and things of that nature. This talks about another common slide I've had here as far as student referrals and classifications. And some of this information was on that previous slide. So as far as total number of students based on beds days, the first Wednesday in October, that's a snapshot about how many students are classified on any given year. That's what the state uses as data from. And it takes a look through students who are then classified preschool, students who are school age, number of referrals we have a year. Out of those referrals, how many students are initially classified, students who are declassified, students who move in and then move out. So just a different way to kind of take a look at that other graph and present the data. This is also an interesting slide. If you take a look at it historically, we have been able to maintain most of our students in what is the least restrictive environment, which is predominantly our integrated co-taught classes, ICT. And that's what that orange bar means. So that means that the percentage of students who spend 80% or more of the day in a integrated setting, and that's the vast majority of our students. And green is other settings, the top purple separate schools, the orange is 80% more of the day, the yellow is between 40 to 79% of the day in an integrated setting. And then the blue, if I'm reading that correctly, is less than 40%. And if you take a look at that, once again, going back to 2015-16, our ratios of where our students are placed has been fairly consistent over the last 6 years. And that, once again, it's a different way to represent that slide. This is also an important data piece to look at. When I first came here in 2015-16, like many districts, Wappingers was cited for disproportionality of suspension of students within certain racial and ethnic categories. I can tell you that year with the state and a couple of really dedicated behavior specialists, we worked hard to simply address those issues. And since I think the end of that 15-16 year and on, Wappingers has not been cited as significantly disproportionate in the last 5 years. And this is a great slide to talk about it. So as far as suspension rates of students with disabilities, we're at 0.5%. And the state says, listen, please try to be no more than 2.7%. We are clearly significantly below that bar. The rest of the slides talk about the programs we have across the districts. Most of them are ICT, integrated co-taught classrooms. I will say we're happy that next year we're going to be able to finally have the last self-contained class at Fishkill. So we have a self-contained K, a self-contained 1-2, and a self-contained 3-4. Next year we're going to complete that with a 5-6. What that gives the district is a self-contained continuum for the southern tier. Prior to that, we just had a self-contained continuum at Oak and Evans. And all the students who have really low incidence disabilities but need that direct explicit instruction, no matter what school they went to, had to go to Oak or Evans. So we have students from Fishkill, Brink, Gayhead getting on buses and going up to those two schools. So what we wanted to do is create a self-contained feeder in the Southern District that kept students within their communities, or at least close to home as possible, as well as consistent with their feeder patterns, and that'll be completed next year. And these next two slides are just similar breakdowns of the different programs across the district. These are the costs associated with special education. So we broke it down over the last 3 years. General fund, what do I got? I forgot what SAF stands for. Special aid funds, thank you, Kristen. So you can see the breakdowns across the costs. And we got 18, 19 there was listed twice for some reason. So the costs do go up over time. Some of that is representative of just, people's salaries, benefits. If you take a look back at the other slide as far as new entrants, something the board should be aware of. When people transfer into Wappingers from another school district, and if they're placed in a day and/or residential program, we don't automatically bring them back to district. We maintain those programs. And once again, Wappingers pays for those programs. And once students are here, our staff will go out and visit students in those programs and determine if, in fact, we can support them best in district. Oftentimes it happens, but sometimes it doesn't. So once again, when you think about all those new students coming into us, some of them, in fact, are coming from us from a DC BOCES program, from a Green Chimneys program. And those costs are simply costs that we pick up by natural consequence of the fact that now they're our district residents. Whoops. Okay. As far as diploma options for students with disabilities, these haven't changed either. So the Regents diplomas, how many exams are needed, how many credits are needed, that stays the same. The low pass option for students with disabilities, if they score between a 55 and a 64 on one or more Regents exams, that counts for a local diploma. The compensatory safety net option means that I may have a student.
Can I get 10 more minutes on the agenda, please?
Thank you, Kristen. Sorry.
Mr. Lumia, motions. Do I have a second? Ms. Pally?
Gotcha.
Unanimous.
Thank you. The compensatory safety net option, you may have a student who's just got a particular class that's a real challenging class. They pass all the Regents exams, but just say they get a 50. So in that case, you can take 165 or better Regents exam and tether it to that particular weak area and have it count towards a local diploma. The appeal process exists for students. Special ed students can appeal one of these up to 2 exams if they're between a 60 and a 64, like general ed students as well. But even for math and English, they can appeal scores as low as a 52 to work their way towards a local diploma. And the last appeal process, which happens rarely, is the superintendent appeal, in which case the building level will determine that a student's 4 years curriculum scope and sequence is appropriate enough. We don't want to penalize a student who simply is not a good test taker. And then if they feel that that student deserves a diploma, they will then pass it on to central office. We will take a look at the student's transcript. And if it sounds appropriate, issue that student a local diploma as well. For students who work towards the diploma also, they can get what's called a CDOS, and that's talking about then helping them develop their transition skills, work skills readiness. At both high schools, we work with Abilities First and Dutchess County ARC for School to Work program, which is really successful, and it continues for many students into the summertime, as well as going to BOCES, and students can meet the CDOS credential when they're at that BOCES program for 2 years working on one of the BOCES programs. And the New York State Skills and Achievement Commencement Credential is for our really low incidence students with a fair amount of intellectual disabilities where they're just not going to be able to earn a diploma through any of those pathways, and they will earn this credential upon exiting high school. So in closing, last 2 slides, I want to say once again, we do really great work here. Wappingers is, again, not significantly discrepant when it comes to disproportionality in race and ethnicity and suspension rate. We don't over-identify for special education. We have not over-identified particular groups of people, subgroups, and specific disability categories. However, the state would prefer below 5% for students in separate settings. Right now, we're at 5.8%, and that's an area we're going to have to work on coming out of the pandemic next year. And in closing, as indicated, 2021 school year with the final build-out of the complete self-contained continuum at Fishkill. And one of the things I'm most proud of is over the last several years is ongoing training for the district, for the district staff across the district in additional reading programs, mostly the Gillingham training with our consultant, Mrs. Dawn Neiman out of Millbrook. And that's going to continue next year for about another 15 teachers. And that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Does anybody have any question for Mr. Zip? Eddie?
Obviously, as I keep saying with everyone that presents, just a huge accomplishment for you and everybody in your department to navigate what you've all gone through. So a huge thank you to everybody for the hard work. I can't imagine what they had to go through. So I want to thank them. I just had a quick question. There is a pending bill, I don't know exactly where it is, in Albany with extending school instruction beyond the age of 21 for those special ed students that obviously have not been able to accomplish the work that they needed in the last almost 2 years. And I know the session is ending, I think, this week. I don't know if we have any students at that age, nearing that age where this might apply, but if we do, are we in a position to continue offering whatever is needed for them to graduate? And have you heard or received any updates either from colleagues or from Albany as to what the status is of this bill so that we could plan for it accordingly?
Yeah, so that's it's in the Senate chambers. I think it's A767956. I forget the name of it. If it's passed and signed into law by Governor Cuomo, it would require that for every student who's going to age out, and when I say age out, those are our students with our most severe disabilities, who tend to, after high school, access some level of adult service where they're not going to earn a high school diploma. And for those students, they have until June of their 21st year to access a free and appropriate public education. After that, they age out, and they may work with, say, Access VR, some of the local adult agencies, and go in that direction. So for those students, if this bill passes, by law, we were mandated to have a immediate committee on special education meeting for those students who would have aged out this year, and then have the committee determine if it's appropriate for them to come back and do another year or two of programming and services. Having worked in the adult field prior to working, my history goes back to working for the Devereaux Foundation up in Red Hook, and I was a service coordinator. Part of the problem with that is that for many of these adult students, moving on to the next stage, some of those services are very time sensitive. So parents are not in a position to put that world on hold. So if your child, say, needs an IRA, which is called an individual residential alternative, those houses and those opportunities don't come around too often. So the committee would have to decide if that's something you want to forego, and if they forego that, then that opportunity may not come around again in a year or two. So it's a decision for the committee to have. Right now, it's in the Senate subcommittee.
I got one.
Keith?
This is congratulations on meeting many of the metrics. There was one that you said you was off and you had some work to do. Any particular thing that you're gonna put into place?
That's separate settings. So, if you take a look at that data point going back to last year, let me see if I can find that slide as well. So it's students in separate settings. And one of the things that I wanted to point out here, given the impact of the pandemic, if you take a look at the D class, whatever, the categories where I say D class, that's the number of students each year when we hold annuals or reevaluations. The students no longer necessitate specialized instruction and therefore no longer require an IEP. So if you go back to 15-16, we had 142 students that year declassed, 113 in 16-17. If you take a look at 19-20, we only had 44. Clearly, the pandemic came upon us, and myself and the assistant directors, we met, we talked together. Unless somebody was truly doing wonderful, we were not going to move towards declassifying students. So, and then if you take a look at all the students who moved in 18-19 plus 27, 19-20 plus 41, 20-21 plus 32, that's a lot of students. And like I said, some of those students maintain their current placement. So what happened, what the pandemic did, it forced us to put the brakes on, where we would have been a little bit more honest before, and now those students stayed in their programs. So hopefully next year, when we get back into a normal routine, we can see who needs what and make better decisions. But we had to put some of that on hold until this all kind of worked itself out. The good news is that the state wants 5%, and we've got 5.8. So that's not that isn't a big number.
I'd like to make a motion to extend for 5 minutes. All those in favor? Mr. Zip, we're at 5.8%, I believe the number was.
5.8.
5.8, and the state is 5.
Yeah.
How many students are we talking about to meet that particular? It can't be that many students
60,
to meet that goal.
60, 50.
60 students?
50.
Okay.
Yeah. If you think about 1% being roughly 115 kids, 0.6.
Is that reachable?
Oh, absolutely. Once we come through this.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Marie?
Yeah, speaking on that 5.8%, Mr. Zip and I go way back on these conversations, and he knows how I feel. As far as with the pandemic, and I appreciate that you guys have, kind of stayed true to where they were because we didn't know, and we are going to have to reevaluate these kids next year, but we're not going to drop this overnight. And I mean, I'm sure Mr. Zip's not going to drop 60 students just to get that 5%. He'd rather be at 5.8 and make sure that these kids are getting it. And that's what I would like to thank you guys for.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, if I come back here next year and I have the same data points as far as graduation rates and everything else, that's a huge success. And to your point, Trustee Johnson, this is going to take a year or two, because I want to make sure everybody is safe and in a good place.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Zip, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Our superintendent would like to make a comment.
Mr. Zip, I'd like to thank you and the entire staff for all your work in the special education department. I also want to thank you for your efforts this year in regards to working on the continuation program on the southern end of the district. I've always felt that that is necessary, and I want to thank you for your attention to detail to eventually make that a reality so that our students don't have to travel a far distance, that they have something within their own backyard, so to speak. So thank you again. It's been needed, and I appreciate your efforts in that regard. Thank you.
7.01 consent agenda. Does any board member want to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated: 7.02, 7.03, 7.04, 7.05, 7.06, 7.07, and 7.08.
Motion?
So moved.
Marie, and second by Mr. Peggy Kellen. All those in favor? Unanimous. 8.01, approval of professional development plan.
Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the list of professional development plan committee members as detailed on page 4 of the plan. And be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education does hereby approve the Wappingers Central School District Professional Development Plan as mandated by Commissioners Regulations 102.2.
Well, before we approve the plan, I think we should hear from,
That's what I was waiting.
We need a motion first.
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second, now we can have discussion.
well, should we have a presentation first?
Well,
We need a I think we need a presentation first, so you got the floor.
On April 8th, there was a presentation on the professional learning plan. At that time, the board had an opportunity to review the changes of the professional learning committee and also to provide any recommendations that you may have that we should include into the plan. Since April 8th, we have not received any requests for modifications. Therefore, the plan that you had in board docs is a plan that we're asking for your approval this evening.
With that being said, motion to approve.
So moved.
All those in favor? Unanimous. 8.02, approval of the use of district mark and royalty agreement, Arbolic t-shirts and apparel. Keith?
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the use of Van Wyck Junior High School name and logo, official marks, and the royalty agreement between the Wappingers Central School District and Arbolic T-shirts and apparel, effective June 8th, 2021. The Board of Education allows Arbolic T-shirts and apparel the non-exclusive rights and a license to use the district's official marks on track apparel. Arbolic T-shirts and apparel then issues payments to the district at 10% of net sales, which are accepted as a donation to the general fund. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education does hereby authorize the President of the Board of Education to sign a royalty agreement with Arbolic T-shirts and apparel as stated.
Motion. Eddie, second. Peggy Kellen, discussion. Eddie? No discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.01, board members may request additional agenda items, discussion items, or requests for information.
Okay.
Peggy?
I'd like to add an item to the agenda related to an issue from the Dutchess County School Boards Association.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Peggy, you got the floor.
Okay. The Dutchess County School Boards Association meeting last Thursday discussed the proposal in the city of Poughkeepsie to open a charter school, the Little Water Preparatory School, and the school district, the Poughkeepsie School District, did not feel this was an appropriate school or that it would add at all to their education in the city of Poughkeepsie. And the other school districts, unanimously, we agreed at the School Boards Association meeting to send a letter, which was written by Kelly Lappin, the executive director, joining the city school Board of Education of the city of Poughkeepsie in opposing approval of this charter school. And it was asked also that the different school boards around the county also add their disapproval of this charter school so that the names of the different school districts can be added to the letter. So I move that we vote to oppose the charter school, Little Water Preparatory School in the city of Poughkeepsie. And if you would like, I can enumerate the various reasons and read the letter. So that's my motion.
Second, Marie?
I'll second. Do you have the resolution written out yet?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Why don't you read the resolution, man?
All right, I'll read the letter, all right? Okay. Dear Mr. Rossi, SUNY Charter Schools Institute, that's the group that in Albany that approves charter schools. The Dutchess County School Boards Association opposes the creation of the Little Water Preparatory School in the city of Poughkeepsie. Funding this school would create a significant financial burden for the Poughkeepsie City School District and is expected to have a larger fiscal impact on Poughkeepsie City School District than other charters in the state due to Poughkeepsie City School District status as a small city school district. This could adversely affect other districts as well who may send students there. Charter schools are harmful to public education, teachers, and especially students. Despite siphoning funding from other often struggling public school districts, they are not held to standards of accountability and transparency. The proposed instructional plan for Little Water provides no benefits beyond the current Poughkeepsie City School District Improvement Plan, which is robust and includes established partnerships as well as being provided to all students. It is counterproductive to reinvent the wheel with a similar approach that has less rigorous planning and infrastructure supporting it. In addition, we support the right of our teachers and staff to unionize, and that right would be in jeopardy with this new school. The Little Water School does not have broad community buy-in. The current public schools in Dutchess County, represented by this organization, oppose the creation of this charter school, and we urge you to reject their application.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the resolution? Unanimous. Thank you. 9.01. Now 10.01, comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public? Speak loud.
Thank you. Good evening. Several people tonight spoke and mentioned their empathy for the school board having their hands tied with regard to the mandates. I'm not one of them. You are a body of independently elected policymakers, funded substantially by the taxpayers in the district. And you should be forming the policies that affect our children.
And it's very easy to take the knee-jerk reaction and say, we're subject to the laws of the state and we can't do this. Well, what laws are we subject to? Is it really a law? Is it a suggestion? What is it we're afraid to do? And what are the real consequences? More often than not, the consequences is our loss of funding from New York State because we take funding bait, which comes with unfunded mandates, and we're afraid of losing the money. These are the taxpayers in the district. These are the families in the district. And you're here allegedly to develop policy that the school district community taxpayers want for their children. We have to stop. We're not supposed to be an arm. You're not supposed to be an arm of the New York State Department of Education. You're supposed to be setting policy for our taxpayers and our students, and there's no amount of money that we're getting from Albany that is worth selling our children's health and well-being for. And I'd like to commend Dr. Bonk and the passion that he showed. And if this school board showed a fraction of the passion that Dr. Bonk does and did in his letter in pushing back against what we know is entirely inappropriate for our children, we might be able to actually do something to save them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks to COVID, it's been more than 16 months since I gave a public presentation, so I'm nervous again. Apologies for that. And thanks for sitting up there tonight and dealing with all of our comments, both through the etherweb, Facebook, and what was some of the worst behavior I've seen from adults lately, sadly in defense of their children. I won't try to blend a line of any emotion. I think that's where things go wrong. My job day to day is to review data and to structure my clients' investments and processes to benefit from that data. We understand that 16 months ago or 18 months ago, we didn't have any data on COVID and we were all shoved into this outcome. And I would like to say thank you to you all for your efforts in the past 16 months in getting us through that. I do commend you, as well as thank you for your letter that we saw today. I will try to point out some data that we have captured in the last 16 months, though, and do so without any emotion. We currently have a setting where we allow remote schooling, and we've provided a very good technological solution to provide that service to the children that are at home. I heard a very good amount of comments about the efforts to bring foods to children and to get the necessary supplies to children. I also want to commend folks for that. 18 months later, with a number of the things that we've put in place and the acknowledgement that outside of school, these children, when we pull a remote day like you all did yesterday, and I understand completely, not complaining, I probably would have not even come into work today if I were any of you, but I understand what that did. And then the acknowledgement is, though, our kids sat together with no masks on in daycare for most of today. Many of these kids on their remote days go to daycare and sit together. The other children that don't do that are typically at home being remote. Maybe they're waiting for their vaccination or they have another alternative in a mask. We now, after 16 months, have multiple alternatives to protect individuals in a public setting. This is not a private setting where one individual gets to judge and make rules for the remainder of the individuals. And I do understand that initially we started out with the goal of saving people or protecting people while we did not have this information. At this point in time, I'd like to voice my opinion in favor of personal sovereignty and personal judgment in consideration of the multiple protections we have for private citizens or those who are concerned about risks related to COVID or other illness. And I'd like to express my full support for removing all requirements to masks in schools. Allowing those who would like to still wear masks should be allowed. Allowing those individuals who like to get remote teaching should be supported. And I do understand that brings budget risk to you all, or, cost considerations to you all, but I don't know that splitting the line of both or requiring everything we've done is not doing that, right? I know we paid extensive amounts of money for partitions and other things in these past years, and that hasn't helped any of your jobs, nor our budgets or taxes on our end. I fear that next year we're going to deal with very similar restrictions, and I also continue to fear for what happens to our children. My child is 8.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, we've hit our
apologies. Thank you all for your time. I think I got my point across. Staying without any emotion, I do support no masks in favor of those who have opportunities now to protect themselves. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I have a 7th grader here at Wappingers Junior High, as well as a 1st grader at Fishkill Plains. I'm using my public comment to address some concerns that other parents who couldn't be here in person wanted to be brought up. A parent had said about, as far as masks go, in the hot days, the heat, who's responsible if a child has health issues, has heat exhaustion, has to be sent to the hospital, has health concerns, anything like that? Who's responsible for that? How is that going to be explained to the parents when you call them and say, yeah, they wore a mask and on these hot days with no air conditioning and no air circulation, because we're all sitting in here and we have fans and we're probably all sweating and we're not wearing masks. So imagine what happens when there is a mask. Who's responsible for that? My husband came up and spoke earlier, and he talked about, being in support of the board of Dr. Bonk, and we appreciate all that you've done, and we just need to reinforce, please just keep pushing back. Please just keep fighting for the kids. I understand the restrictions that you're under, but enough, and we need your support.
Are there any comments? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Marie Johnson, second. All those in favor? Thank you for coming.